excited that you've taken time out to tune in to the Ella Johnson Show. I hope you enjoy the broadcast. So sit back, relax, and I'll see you at the end of the show. One day someone asked me, Ella, why do you do talk shows? Like, why is this so important to you? I said, because I want people to know that God does use us. Because sometimes things don't happen to you. They happen through you. And now it's time for the Ella Johnson Show, where we set the table for real talk conversations. So stay tuned. It's all coming up next. The Ella Johnson Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ella Johnson Show. Listen, I am so excited about tonight's broadcast because I'm back. Did y'all miss me? I was in Atlanta at the National Association for Broadcast Journalists Convention, and I had a blast. Let me tell you, I had a blast. I was excited. I received a lot of messages of support from you guys. And Stephanie Richardson called and prayed with me because a sister was hurting. Listen, yes, I was in a lot of pain because I actually fell down the stairs and hurt my knee. Can you believe that? Long story. But listen, I am excited. If you are watching the Ella Johnson Show from YouTube tonight, please do me a favor and subscribe since you're already there. If you're watching from Facebook, just tag, share, type folks' names into the comments that you want to watch the broadcast, because tonight we're going to have a very special broadcast. I have Stephanie's going to be here with me, and Robert and Keith, and we're going to be talking about policing in Alabama. Yeah, if you guys have been watching the news, you know that Birmingham is being hit with a lot of in-custody police investigations and deaths. And of course, you know that T. Tunstall, who is from my hometown, Monroeville, we have been talking about his story. Now, his conversation will continue tonight, okay? So if you're tuning in tonight and you want to talk about T. Tunstall and policing, you are in the right place, okay? Now, listen, Monroeville, it's time to pay attention, okay? Tonight, I already told you that we're going to be talking about policing. But we're also going to be talking about accountability, leadership, and the questions that still haven't been answered. We're bringing the conversation from Monroe County to Montgomery. That's it. Where it had to happen at some point. Because what happens here matters. Now, tonight, I'm joined by two write-in candidates, Robert Mardis III and Keith O. Williams. And let me say this plainly. We've asked questions. We've requested answers, and as of tonight, there has been no response, no legitimate response from the city of Monroeville. That should give you guys pause. Like, seriously, they're not talking. They're just not concerned about what's going on in Monroeville when it comes to this situation with T. Tunstall. So tonight we're going to talk about it, but we're going to bring some other people that are not from Monroeville to talk about it, because I'm interested, and I know you guys are too. I want to hear what they have to say. I want to know what they feel when they watch this video, how they're going to be affected by it. So there's no spin, no distractions, just questions and answers tonight. All right? Y'all ready? Yes? Okay. Well, I want to bring my guests on. My first guest I want to bring on here is Robert Mardis III. Hello, Robert. How are you?
How are you doing this evening, Miss Ella?
I am doing well. I want to thank you so much for agreeing to be here tonight. But I want to make sure that everyone knows who you are. Now, Robert Tonight, we're going to have a conversation about Alabama, about leadership, accountability, public safety, and the direction of this state. Now, my guest tonight is a man who has been involved in Alabama politics for years. He's run for public office, been active in Democratic politics, and has now stepped outside. Okay, guys, he has stepped outside the traditional two-party system. Nothing new there. People do it all the time. His name is Robert Mardis III from Birmingham, Alabama. And he is running as a write-in candidate for governor of Alabama. Now, Robert describes himself, and he's going to talk to you a little bit more about what that means, but he has described himself as progressively conservative. He believes Alabama needs to find common ground between progressive ideas and conservative principles. But tonight, we're not just going to talk about labels. That's not what it's all about. Y'all know how I feel about politics. We're going to talk about policy, because that we do need to talk about. We're going to talk about Alabama's criminal justice system. We're going to talk about policing and accountability. Y'all know we have used those words since we started this broadcast about accountability. And we haven't gotten it yet. We're going to talk about prisons, the school to prison pipeline, and what happens when a citizen dies while in government custody. Because you guys realize that's exactly what happened, Robert. This young man died in police custody. And we're going to talk about something I believe every Alabama voter deserves to know. That is why Robert is going to be here. Now, what would Robert Mardis III actually do if Alabama were to give him that power to lead? Don't you want to know? This is the time where you get to know your candidates, know what they believe, know how they feel about certain subjects, especially the ones that have our kids being buried way too soon. They're dying way too soon, and we need answers, and we need to hear from the people that are running. So I'm excited that Robert is being here. Running for governor, Robert, is easy to talk about. Governing is different. So tonight, I'm going to ask the questions, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to answer them. No party talking points, no easy passes, just a conversation about Alabama and the people who live in Alabama. Okay? So
Yes,
welcome to the Ella Johnson Show. Yay!
Thank you so much for having me on. It's one of the biggest difficulties running outside of the two-party system is getting the exposure necessary for folks to see your vision and what direction you actually want to take the state in.
Wonderful. Well, we are also joined tonight by Mr. Keith Williams. Hello, Mr. Keith. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me today.
Now, tonight we're bringing another voice into the conversation about Alabama and the direction of this state. Now, my guest is Keith O. Williams, and he's a community advocate, nonprofit leader. He's a minister, veteran, peer support specialist, and an independent write-in candidate for Alabama House District 55. He's the founder and executive director of Great I Am Ministries, Outreach International, and co-founder of the Voters Legal Justice Watch Group. His work has focused on public safety, criminal justice reform, government accountability, affordability, utility oversight, and constituent representation. That sounds like the stuff y'all want to hear more about, right? And his approach is simple: ACT, accountability, community engagement, and transparency. All the things that we need from our elected officials in Monroeville, and we can't get the elected officials in Monroeville here, then we might as well talk to the people that are trying to get elected, right? Is that good? We're going to talk about policing, government accountability, the rights of Alabama citizens, affordability, and what Keith says he would do differently if voters were to send him to Montgomery. Okay? Welcome, Keith, to the Ella Johnson Show.
Thank you so much for having me this evening. It's great to be here.
Well, I just want to first of all say thank you, because you came in like at the last minute. It's amazing because Mr. G was not able to be here with us tonight, and Keith was just like, "Hey, listen, I'd love to come on your show." I'm like, "Well, call me. What are you doing tonight?" So thank you for such a short. I mean, that was literally the shortest notice ever. like an hour within time for us to go. So thank you so much for doing that. And I know Stephanie is here, but I know she is traveling. She's in California, guys. So she is traveling, but she's going to join us as soon as she can. So I just want to welcome all of you to the Ella Johnson Show. I'm looking forward to this conversation tonight, guys, because we got to dig in. But before we do anything, I told both of you that I wanted to show the video because the purpose of this broadcast is, yes, I want to hear what you guys plan to do for the people in Alabama, but I also want to hear what you have to say about what happened in my hometown of Monroeville, Alabama. You guys have heard of Monroeville, right? Both of you? Yes?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Just making sure. Have you ever been there?
Can't say I've stayed long. I've passed through.
I do understand. I do understand. What about you, Keith? Have you ever been to Monroeville?
No, I've never been to Monroeville.
Okay. Well, you know what? I want you to feel at home because I am a Monroevillian. We have a lot of people that are watching this broadcast. But this is a very quick video. It's only like 30 seconds. So I want you guys to take a look at it so you can see the reason we're having this broadcast tonight. Here we go. Okay. Now that video was shot by a bystander who just so happened to catch it on video. It was, they recorded in like two different sets, and I just kind of put them together. When you watched that video, Keith, I want to hear from you first. What did you see?
That sounds like something that took place recently in Birmingham, where a guy from uh, the suburb of Center Point. Uh, it kind of reminded me of that video. There was an encounter with the police officer and he got shot.
Wow. Was anyone charged, or is it still ongoing?
The investigation right now is still, ongoing. That's just one of many officer involved shootings that took place in the Birmingham area in the last 3 months.
Wow. So I want to hear from you, Robert. What did you see? I saw your face kind of twitch a little bit. What did you see when you watched that video?
The first question I have, has there been any official video from police body cams released for the moments prior? No. Okay. So because my first concern is his body looks kind of lifeless in the moments of them taking him to the police car. So I want to know what happened in the moments before this person started recording this incident to see what would cause him to have to be dragged out in that manner.
Well, I'm going to give you guys a little overview of this story. There was a call from 911. Someone had called the police saying that there was a domestic violence situation. And later in the afternoon, they saw him. And, of course, there was a foot chase. And he ended up in the woods. And whatever happened in those woods is what led up to what you saw in the video. They started taking a video as they were bringing him out of the woods. Now, one eyewitness says that they saw him when he was on his knees and he never responded. He had a cousin that was on the scene, and she called out to him. He did not respond. She continued to call out. He did not respond. But the police chief says that he was alert and talking to officers when he was being placed in the car.
Mm-hmm.
At all?
Again, I would need to see the police body cam footage, because what I've seen in that video, it doesn't seem like he was going to be very responsive from where I saw him dragged into the police car to him being alert in that car.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of those situations to where we're requiring officers to wear body cams. They should be required to show that footage.
And we haven't seen any footage because in the state of Alabama, isn't it true that they don't have to show that body cam footage? Even if the family asks, they may not get to see it.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's very rare that even the family will be able to see that footage, and that's thanks in part to recent legislation that was passed by the Alabama State legislature, which is, of course, is under scrutiny right now because many people are saying that it lacks transparency, and accountability, when it comes to the family wanted to see the footage, of what happened to their loved one, especially if there's a officer, involved shooting. And I think that's one thing that we need to, as a legislator, that that needs to be revisited to make sure that you have transparency, you have accountability in place.
So I want everybody to get to know a little bit more about both of you guys because I want to qualify you as being guests here and what it is that you think. I want to put that out there up front. So I want to start with you, Robert, because you mentioned to me that you've been a Democrat. You've been a member of the Democrat Party for what, 20 plus years, 24 years?
22 years.
It was 22 years. Now you're
Yes.
independent. Why the
Correct.
switch?
We're at a point in not just Alabama, but America overall, where we have to do away with this tribalism of I automatically oppose what the other party says. So again, I've spent 22 years working through the democratic system. I mean, I've served as president of the UAB College Democrats, president and vice president of Birmingham Young Democrats, vice president of the Alabama Young Democrats. I've served on both the state and county executive committees. And when you spend 22 years watching a system operate that says, if I align with your party, I have to virtually spew every message that you say. And it's almost taken as betrayal if you say, well, I agree with 90% of this, but the other 10% I don't. I actually have had some heated arguments with folks because I actually said, no, I actually agree with the Republicans on this particular minute piece of the puzzle, but you're a Republican now. Like if you pay attention to my social media, you'll notice that some days I may sound like a Democrat, some days I may sound like a Republican, and that's only because I like to look at situations based off of what actually is and what would be the best solutions. And sometimes you have a straightaway where you can be a progressive and floor it. Sometimes you're going around the curves and you need to slow it down and use the brakes. So for me, I look at progressive and conservatives as progressives are the gas, conservatives are the brakes. And sometimes you have to know when to hit the gas and when to hit the brakes. And as long as we're going to keep saying, I have to hit the gas in every situation, or I have to hit the brakes in every situation, we're going to be stagnant. We're going to stall ourselves out and not truly advance. So that's one of the things I want to bring to this governor's office is to put aside the partisan agendas and let's focus on what actually works for Alabamians. What we can look at other states, what they have done that works for them, that we can improve on our state. We can come up with solutions that actually work if we can take minds and let the meetings of the minds actually have a real meetings of the minds and actually everyone able to express themselves without fear of, I'm going to be primaried against if I don't fall in line with my party. And that's both political parties. If you're an elected official and look at it from a national standpoint, you have to pretty much fall in line with the party's agenda. And if you don't, they'll primary somebody against you, and now you're losing your seat. So now your voice is being silenced. And now that your voice is being silenced, no matter how passionate you was about other issues, you're almost having to succumb to the issues that you're not passionate about just to maintain the seat. I think we can operate a system that's better than that. I think we can look at issues, figure out what will work best, and go from there. And look at it as you're not my enemy because you think differently than me. No one of us are going to be able to control whether we're progressive or conservative thinkers in certain situations. It's our life experiences that dictate that. So I don't want you to look at me as your enemy because I may disagree with you on this particular thing.
I mean, I think isn't it always the mindset of an official, an elected official, to find a way to work with both sides? I mean, you have to. I mean, isn't that? I mean, I've never been a politician, never have aspired to be one, but you would think that that's a given. We have to work together because you need both parties to get things done. I like how you put it, Robert. You said the progressives are the gas, conservatives are the brakes, but you need both to move the vehicle.
Absolutely.
I like that. I like that. What do you think about that, Keith? That his conservative.
I totally, agree with him, on that because you have different parts of, a vehicle that is needed in order for that vehicle, to operate. If you take one thing away from that vehicle, then you're going to have problems. And so when it comes to Republicans, Democrats, and independents, I believe everybody has some things in common, but we don't talk about those things in common because fear mongering has, overgrown the political spectrum, not only in Alabama, but nationally, like weeds. And so, what do you do when you got to separate the weeds from the grass? So, what do you do with weeds? You have to kill the weeds in order for, the grass to grow and your landscape, will look beautiful and in harmony. And that's the same thing that I look at when it comes to Republicans, independents, and Democrats. Everybody, we all have common ground, but there's some things that are in the way that is causing us not to have a conversation about what we are actually, what makes us one. Instead, we have fear that's dividing us, and that's the problem.
So let me ask you a question about both of you guys. What I've heard on social media and what I've seen in both of your, posts, I see that people feel as if you're splitting the Democratic vote. Do you agree with that, Robert?
Absolutely not. Who's to say that the folks who would vote for me was going to vote for the Democratic candidate anyway? Who's to say that the folks who vote for me were going to vote for the Republican candidate? There's plenty of people who don't show up to vote at all. So maybe the votes that I actually gain on election day wasn't going to either one of your candidates. I think we live in a democracy. I think that you have to, and competition is the backbone of democracy. If you want a democracy to truly work, let everybody who is willing to take that chance and put their ideas on the table, let the people hear those ideas and let the people decide whether or not they want to vote for them or not. But when you're, and I'll say it, I told myself I shouldn't say this on live, but I'm going to say it. We have to stop taking the black folks vote as a guaranteed vote for the Democratic Party. And that somehow, if you're not voting for the Democrat as a black person, you're not black, or that you have to fall in line with their agenda. Or if a black person runs as an independent, somehow you're going to split the black vote. Are you saying that black folks can't think for themselves of who they want to put their support behind? It's fine for you to vote for the Democrat if that's where your values lie. But we have to stop trying to pigeonhole black folks into one political position. That is detrimental to our community as a whole, because we're not welcoming every black person in this community. Because if you look at, there are some black conservatives, they understand the black plight just as much as the black liberal. Don't shut the black conservatives out or the black independent out of the process. We need to take the best ideas from both sides of this community, bring them together, and figure out how do we move the community forward as a whole. But if every political election is going to be black folks, we give your votes to the Democratic Party and you won't consider anything else, you're positioning yourself to not get anything done for you. If I know I can count on you to support me, I don't have to do anything to gain your support. And that's where we are right now with the Democratic Party.
Wow. You feel that same way as well, Keith? Or do you agree or disagree?
I mean, I totally agree. But in my situation is, a little bit different. The incumbent is a Democrat, and there is no Republican, running in that seat. So it's just the two of us. But
Oh,
the common denominator is the same. That people are looking for Yeah, they're looking for a way out. They're looking for a way of escape of this Tea Party fanatic that's been plaguing this country, for years because they feel that neither side is looking out for them. And I truly, believe that that's what, is going on. You have talking points, political talking points for both sides. But who is really sitting down with constituencies and really meeting them where they're at and say, hey, let's talk about, where you're going through. Let's talk about the kitchen table issues that people all across the state of Alabama and the country, are talking about. No one is willing to do that. Why? Because each Republicans and Democrats, they have their talking point. This is what you need to say. This is how you say it. And so when I decided to run as an independent, I decided to get out of that, political lens and actually have conversations with the voters right where they're at, not talking at them, but talking to them because they're tired of these, political games. Oh, and by the way, nearly half of the voters in America now consider themselves to be independent.
45%.
Yeah.
We actually
So,
are
yeah.
the majority of the minority, basically.
But you
And
guys have
so
to be written in, though. What does that mean when you have to be written in?
So that's the kicker. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's the kicker about running for office in Alabama. I can't speak for other states. So if you're watching from other states, this is specifically to Alabama. You can run what's called an independent campaign to where you go out and you get a couple of thousand votes based off the last gubernatorial election cycle. So for this particular cycle, I would need 43,000 petition signatures just to appear on the ballot. But the Democrats and Republicans, they can get on the ballot just simply by paying a qualifying fee. So we rigged the system to where it makes it impossible or almost impossible for independents to get on the ballot. But once I did not reach that threshold of 43,000 people, I decided to continue to race as a write-in candidate. And I'm just the reason is because I believe we have to have more than two options. It can't just simply be left or right. I want us to move forward. I'm tired of the going back and forth with, I got to convince you that the left side of the aisle or the right side of the aisle are evil, can't be reasoned with, because I've spoken to people who consider themselves progressive, people who consider themselves liberal, conservative, everything in between. And the things that you'll find is that underneath all of that rhetoric of I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, they're human and we share the same common goals. We may have a difference in how do we get there. I think we can take it back for a prime example is when you look at McCain and Obama. When some lady said something negative about Obama and John McCain quickly corrected it and said, no, he's a good, decent man. We just disagree politically. Or
right.
when you look at that. Or if you look at George Bush, the son, when he was giving his State of the Union address and Pelosi had just became the Speaker of the House, he said, I have a great honor to be the first president to say the words, Madam Speaker. It was not about politics. It's always been about politics, but we used to have enough humanity to actually work together and we disagree, but actually be able to get meaningful work done. And we're going more and more polarizing to the extremes in both parties at this point, to where you can't work with the other side, because if you do, you're somehow a sellout to your side. I don't see it as sides. We are the United States of America. We are Alabama. We are whatever state you're in. If you're an elected official, your job is to serve every constituent. It isn't you're the Democratic governor or the Republican governor. You're the governor of Alabama. I want to be the governor of Alabama and put apart the partisan agendas, and let's focus on getting more affordable housing for my generation who's been priced out of housing. How do we get the young folks to actually buy into a system that actually works beyond this idea that we're going to do socialism now? That's not going to work long term for us. But my generation is looking for a system that will actually serve them, because, I mean, we've been hearing it forever that they're going to do stuff for the youth. We've been saying that for so long that I've actually aged out of the qualifying age of being the youth. And we still have not adopted policies that are actually geared towards us. But I think the bigger issue is that a lot of people, especially in politics, look at us millennials as if we're still kids. We're not kids anymore. We have kids in college, but we're still being talked to as if we're kids and we still have time. When you're looking at the first time home buyers age, it's roughly 38, 40 years old. Now, I'm a realtor by trade. So I'm looking at these things. Housing has become so unaffordable for my generation, and where it was throwing around 50-year mortgages. You take out a 50-year mortgage when you're 40 if you want to, you're never going to own that house. You're never going to build that generational wealth. And we're denying my generation the opportunities to actually elevate ourselves when you're pricing an entire generation out of affordable housing.
So have you had the opportunity to meet the other candidates who are running for governor?
So I actually know Doug Jones. I've actually worked on his campaign when he ran for the Senate, both times. So I have nothing against Doug Jones at all. I actually like him as a person. I've never met Tubby Tuberville. I don't think I know about him other than him coaching footballers that he became a U.S. Senator. And I've seen some of his positions, and I quite frankly do not agree with the bulk of Tommy Tuberville's positions, especially when it pertains to data centers. You're moving too fast. I'm all about innovation and technology, but let's make sure we put some safeguards in. Let's see the pros and cons before you just start saying, hey, let's pop them up everywhere. And there's not going to be any harm to the environment. There isn't going to be any cost associated with it to the public having to pay for these things, or the water usage. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered before you just say, yeah, you know what? Let me stroke my pen and say, let's bring in data centers. Again, I'm not against data centers. I'm 100% support advancements in technology, but we have to do it responsibly.
So let me ask you a question. How do you guys get folks out to vote? I understand that the task of getting people to the polls has been a little, it's been a little difficult in Alabama. So what's going on with that? Why aren't people showing up to vote? Is it they just don't believe in the candidates? Do you think they just don't understand what the candidates are going to do? Or do you think they're just hopeless? What do you think it is?
I think go ahead, Keith. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a combination of everything that you have mentioned. I mean, people are just literally tired of a politician just promising them they're going to do something, promising that they're going to listen, and then when they get in the office, they do a 180 and they become a totally different person, like Frankenstein's monster. And people are tired, of that. They just say, well, I'm just going to look out, for me. I'm going to look out for my family. I'm going to do what I got to do. But one thing that I am proud of, and the one thing that we have to get back into doing, is meeting the people where they are and start listening to them. They just want to be heard. I know when I was on the campaign trail, you know what people told me? They told me, I just want to be heard. I want the people that I elect to hear what I got to say. And that means a lot to a constituent who have not been heard, whose voice has been silenced, for years. And then when I decided to run for this particular position, and I started going on the campaign trail, people were amazed as to how attentive, I was, because when I go to in different places to speak, I'm not a long-winded person. I'm just going to, lay all the cards on the table, and then the floor becomes yours. Because the fact of the matter is, the people matter. Period.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. So I'm glad that both of you are really, talking about the people, because I want to go back to Monroeville. Now, Monroeville, Alabama is my hometown. And like I said, I started talking about the T. Tunstall story because, well, no one else was talking about it. Okay. And we are having a difficult time. Let me ask you guys a question. Whenever an investigation is going on, do you feel comfortable talking about that situation? In other words, let me put you guys in Monroeville. You saw the video. What would you be doing right now if you were an elected official responsible for Monroeville right now?
So I think as an elected official, you do have more authority to request for, say, to see the video footage. But I think when you have, especially in this day and age, when emotions are so high around police brutality, et cetera, you do have to take caution in how you approach certain situations when they're still under investigations, because you may say something that may throw the entire investigation off, or you may hinder something. Or so when you are an elected official, when you speak, people listen. So you have to be very cautious about what you're saying. It's not that you don't care. It's that you have to make sure that what you say don't inadvertently make a situation worse. So if I was in Monroeville, I would actually make sure that I was able to see that footage, and I would have to gauge my response based off of the entirety of the video, because I really want to see what happened in those moments prior to him coming out, because that doesn't look like some normal apprehension. I'm sorry. I've seen people run from the police on a couple of police videos, and they're still pretty much walking out on their own accord. And no disrespect to the family, but he looked lifeless in that video to me. And I want to know, what did they do in those woods, or did not do in those woods? And I think people, especially the family, deserves to know that.
So,
Yeah, and I totally agree with Mr. Martis. I think that in order to come up with, in order to have, an intelligent conversation about what's happening, we need to gather all the facts. Now, as a legislator, my authority will be, limited because, I'm not an executive. I would be, legislator. So I would be dealing, with policy. And what happens here in this case, that the video that you saw is obviously going to be a policy and an oversight, issue. So I can hold, entities accountable, like, law enforcement accountable through policy and oversight.
so when people watch this, the citizens are getting anxious because no one's talking. I understand what you're saying, that, hey, Ella, you got to be careful. But people elect politicians for reasons like this, times like this. If they're going to have to do all the legwork, why do we need elected officials? Where do you step in? Because we can't call, I'm speaking as if I'm a concerned citizen. We can't call the police. They're not going to listen to us. But if you, as the governor, say, hey, look, there's some people from Monroeville have been reaching out to me. I saw this video. What are you guys doing? Because where does a regular citizen
And
go
see,
when they're frustrated with law
see,
enforcement?
the mayor in Monroeville should have seen the video by now. So I will say this: first thing is you do have to get public concern up. Once you have public concern, you put the pressure on elected officials. I hate that you have to put the pressure on them. You should want to do your job because you ran to do this particular job. So I think that if you're the mayor or you're the police chief, you should be speaking to the citizens and giving them more clarity. Because again, I'm not from down there, and my first question is, what happened before he came out of those woods? I would say it like this: the longer you wait, the more questions are going to arise that look like you're trying to cover up something. So I think that when you're into these type of positions, again, you have to be careful, but at the same time, you service the people, and people, especially the family, have a right to know what happened to their loved one. And if there was some kind of misconduct by the officer, they should be held accountable, and the public should be made aware. I don't think that we should I don't see the point of having body cam footage if you're not going to be able to at least show the family the footage to know that, okay, we actually did not do certain things to your child. It's something, natural causes. It could have been natural causes. But if you won't put out the actual footage, people are going to speculate. So I think it is on you as an elected official to see the video and put out at least a statement. And from what I've gathered from you, they haven't even put out an official statement on.
No, you know what? I'm actually gonna show you, because this is one of the concerns that we have, is that the statement that the chief of police made, that it's so contradictory to what we saw here. All right, I want you to see, this is the statement right here that the chief of police made. And I want you to remember that video that you saw. Okay.
That is extremely small. Could you?
I'll read it. I'll read it to you guys. On 3/30/26, the Monroeville Police Department received a call on Ammarin Tunstall in reference to a domestic situation. Mr. Tunstall also had outstanding warrants with our agency. A few hours later, around 2:30 p.m., a uniformed patrol officer with the Monroeville Police Department saw Mr. Tunstall walking near Crow Avenue and Marengo Street. When the officer attempted to make contact with him, Mr. Tunstall fled on foot into a wooded area. Other officers responded to the area, and a short time later, Mr. Tunstall was located and taken into custody without incident. Mr. Tunstall was talking with officers and alert, but refused to walk. This was not uncommon behavior for Mr. Tunstall. While being escorted to the patrol vehicle, Mr. Tunstall did walk on his own for a distance, but then stopped again. Mr. Tunstall spoke with officers as he was being placed in the vehicle to be transported to the detention facility. Okay, where am I? Okay. Upon arrival, Mr. Tunstall became unresponsive. Officers immediately began giving Mr. Tunstall medical and called EMS. The writing is kind of small. I'm sorry. He was then transported to the Monroe. He was then transported to the Monroe County ER, where he was later pronounced deceased. The Alabama Law Enforcement Agency was immediately contacted to investigate due to the nature of the incident. The officers involved have been placed on administrative leave. Our agency is cooperating fully with the investigation and turned over all body camera footage and evidence. Any questions related to the incident, blah, 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 you have to go to the Alabama State Bureau of Investigation. Now, here's the thing. Those officers are not on leave, because now I want to give you a totally different scenario. Those officers are back at work now. They were off like maybe 2 weeks. Was it 2 weeks or 2 days? I don't know, but they're back at work. Does that change now that you've listened to this statement? Think about the video. Now, what do you think, Robert?
So my position is you have to ask the question of who's taking responsibility for this. As far as it sounds like the chief is saying, go talk to the state agency that if you have any questions. But if it's for me, now this isn't judging based off of me not knowing the mayor down there or police chiefs down there, but my question would still be, if it's that cut and dry that he was actually responsive, he was actually speaking to you, he was actually walking for a certain distance, et cetera, why couldn't that footage be released by now? Again, it's always going to raise questions when you're saying something as it was no complications, but now I can't show you the video. If there's no complications, you would just show me the video. Again, I'm just speculating. I think that's how most people would interpret that, if you won't just put out the footage of something that is quote unquote that simplistically done. I mean, that's a lot of questions. It doesn't sound something doesn't sound right about why you wouldn't. If I'll put it like this: if I'm the police chief and one of my officers arrested someone and that person unfortunately passed away in their custody, and I have video footage of it was nothing done wrong on my officer's part, I'm trying to show you the footage in 36 seconds just because I don't want there to be any speculation. So again, I'm not pointing the finger at anyone down there, but I am saying that I can see how the citizens could be extremely concerned with your transparency as to what actually happened.
So, Mr. Keith, you saw the video. You saw the video.
So comparing the statement, with the video, number one, it raises a lot of questions, and number two, I think there's some elements in that statement that's either not adding up or something is missing, and that's where your speculation and all your questions, are coming from. Now, just like Mr. Mardis said, if it was cut and dry, then you should be able to lay everything out on the table, and it would be done with. But because that has not happened, now we're seeing a growing speculation and a lot of questions being, asked, and there's a lot of concern. And that is definitely justifiable, by the people. Because I know if I was living in Monrovia and that happened, I would be the same way.
So what do they do then? Wait, let the police figure it out. We get to them when we want to get to them. What do the citizens? They're watching right now. In Monroeville, they're watching. We had an elected official that was going to be on tonight. He's not here. No one is talking. You call the local offices. They can't even update their website, for crying out loud. So when you try to reach out to them, you're sending out emails that they have on the websites that come back to you. So it's almost like they have it blocked from being transparent. The mayor is getting ready to step down on the 1st because he has health concerns. We don't know if the mayor pro tem is going to take over, who's going to be running the city. The DA, you call the DA's office and they're rude and they tell you, look, if you have any questions, you call the AG's office. So what do you do with that? And then I had an elected official on here, the state rep right now, Thomas Jackson. I had him here on this broadcast and he was talking about how he reached out to the mayor and the mayor is not returning his call. Well, if you guys are elected officials and you call Keith and Robert and you call Mr. Mayor and he's not returning your calls, what do? If you can't get him, you're not doing any better than I am. And I'm not even elected.
So as someone who is if I was an elected official and I reached out to the mayor, I would strongly recommend that somebody put up a new mayor, run against this mayor, because if you have elected state legislators, I believe you said, who reached out to the mayor and you won't even respond to the other elected officials, I know you're not responding to the people. I know you're not being accountable to the people. This is no disrespect to this person. I have no idea who this person is. I wish them sincerely the best of recovery in their health and the health aspects they have going on. But at the same time, if you're an elected official, you have to be accountable to the people. And again, in this particular situation, with the limited information that I do have in this short amount of time, there's too many disparities in here. Again, you would want to absolve your officers if there was nothing wrong, but at the same time, you as an elected official, you have to answer the phone. You as the mayor, that is literally your job. And if you're not going to do your job, citizens, and I know you say he's stepping down September 1, and it's probably for the best for y'all city, if I'm going to be honest.
But then what happens?
I think there needs to be, so if you're not getting anywhere, with the city of Monrovia or, the county, then I think there needs to be some state, intervention. If whoever is elected to the state, positions in November, that I think that the state needs to step in, and handle this situation. Because this has been going on for far too long. It's been happening in Birmingham. We have similar, issues, in Birmingham, and these folks act like they don't know, what to do. They're avoiding, they're avoiding accountability. They are avoiding transparency. So I think the state needs to, intervene. Whether it's the governor's office, the attorney general's office, or the state legislature. Somebody from the state needs to step in and handle this situation. If the local government refuse to do anything, refuse to be accountable, and refuse to be transparent, I truly believe that the state needs to, intervene. And I have no problem as a member of the Alabama State Legislature to do what I can on my end to intervene, and to address the situation, not only for Monrovia, but for the entire state.
So you being an elected official, you could do that.
Absolutely.
So you could call up the Attorney General, Mr. Marshall. You could call him up and say, "Hey, dude, I've been talking to the folks down there in Monroeville, Alabama, and I don't like what's going on. We got a video out here. You got residents concerned. You got people getting arrested for just breathing hard now. And I think a lot of it is because it could have something to do with these shows. We're continuing to talk about it. So now the people there, and that's why they're afraid to speak out. And they're getting arrested for just, one guy said, Ella, I got arrested. My brother called because they heard something, and he got arrested for just calling 911. Like, it seems like the city is wilding out. You got a sheriff right now. I want to get your take on this, because we have a big issue. You have a sheriff right now that's listed. Now, granted, nothing has been proven. It's just alleged right now, but he's named in a lawsuit, a federal lawsuit, because, a civil lawsuit, because someone was arrested, roughed up. He was able to obtain the video from someone on the inside. It went out. The guy was roughed up a little bit, whatever. And now you have the sheriff that's named on the lawsuit. Like, should he? I know he's not been found guilty of anything, but the optics, how does that look? Then you got a city, yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna give you an example, and it may not be related to what we're talking about, right here, but what this have in common is an elected official, intervening, in a particular situation in a local, town. Now, y'all
Okay.
remember what happened in Brookside, right? Where the police was there was a lot of
Speed traps.
yeah, speed traps, and they made most of their money from these speed traps. And you actually had a member of the Alabama state legislature went to that town. She went as an elected official to intervene in that situation as a state legislator, and she got things turned around as a legislator in Brookside.
Wow.
Are you aware of that?
I'm not. I haven't heard about that. I'm sorry. I haven't heard about that one.
Yeah. You may want to look that up, but that's an example of a state elected official intervening in a local, situation where you're not getting any accountability, and no transparency. Now, I know I'm running for office as a politician, but I'm also, an advocate. And after listening to all this, I think that the advocate side is probably going to come out of me and say, "Hey, you need to do something, about this." I'm going to call whoever and say, "Hey, we need to have a conversation, about this, because the people want accountability, the people want transparency. What are y'all doing down here?" So I think at this point, the advocacy, in me is definitely going to come out. You know what
I
I'm saying?
see. Well, listen, that is why I reached out to Thomas Jackson, because he's the state representative for that area. And I reached out to him because I was thinking, okay, we have a petition, and I'm going to drop that now. For those of you that are watching this broadcast, I'm going to drop the petition. We created a petition for people to sign, simply because we're trying to get the AG involved. Okay. That's what this petition is saying, hey, DOJ, AG, whomever, can you get involved in this? Because nothing's happening in Monroe. They're not talking. You have a chief of police that, obviously, if she saw the video, I don't see how she could have written that statement. Then you have the mayor who said, listen, guys, okay, I've investigated worse than this. What's the big fuss over this about? Let's let these officers get back to work. They have families. Like, he literally said these things,
I understand that
and
the
so
officers have families, but the murder victim has a family as well, or the deceased young man has a family as well. How are they supposed to get on? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that statement kind of rubbed me the wrong way. You're the elected official down there, and you're making statements of you've seen worse, you've investigated worse. That's not compare crimes, and you still have compassion as a human being. Somebody lost their child. Uh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. That statement just it
no,
rubbed
you
me.
cut me off right where you needed to. I'm telling you, because you're passionate about this, and you just saw, that was your first time watching that video, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And that was your first time too, Mr. Williams, correct?
Yes, but I've also seen, similar, situations where you have, an officer involved altercation or an officer involved, shooting. And like I said earlier, you have multiple, officer involved incidents in the Birmingham area in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
And it seems like everybody is pushing this thing under the rug. And I'm saying, and Robert, I'm quite sure that you will probably agree with me on this, but enough is enough. Okay. It's time for me. I can't speak for him, but I think at this point it's time to stop being a politician and start being an advocate. Because we got some hurting families out here. We got hurting loved ones. This is no time to be putting a political spin on any of this because we got some hurting families and we need to bring justice to those hurting families. That should be our number one concern, period. Now, at
So
this
when they're
point,
not,
nothing else matters.
I know, and so when they're not doing it, if just a regular resident, what do they do? Do they fill out complaint
I
forms to the
think
AG? What do they do?
I think the most effective way in this day and age is to take to social media and put as
Okay.
much attention on it as you possibly can. Um, I mean, the statements, the video, all of it, constantly. If you get enough people to put it on social media, it travels a lot farther than Monroeville. And if some of the things that you have mentioned here holds true to some of the activities, if you're calling 911, I don't know what the rest of the story is, but if you have people being arrested at a abnormally high volume just for the sake of arresting people, you start to draw a lot more attention to that. Now you start to get the statewide national attention to what's going on in some. Because I'm sorry, a lot of us know that some of these smaller towns do operate a little differently than the bigger
Right.
cities because you do have so many more people there that are watching. And so we I think most of us understand that. But I do think that the citizens themselves organize around whatever the issues are, whether it's this issue or the other issues that are going on down there, and make it as aware, make as many people aware of it as you can. And
Yeah.
hopefully, with social media, with the ability to go viral, it puts the pressure on the folks who are in leadership down there to be held accountable. Because, again, if you're arresting people just for calling 911, and I know that's probably more to that story, but you have to start looking at the leadership is like, again, Keith mentioned Brookside. There was blatant corruption down there. And we know that the smaller towns typically are more susceptible to the extreme corruption. I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you. And as governor, I think that's one of the things that you have to step into is to make sure that when people who are in these areas and they are reaching out to their local officials and you can't get them on the phone or you send them an email and they don't respond. I'll give you an example. I'm not going to call it out. I'm not going to call the cities out, but I've actually received a speeding ticket and from a small town in Alabama on my way to Georgia. And there's no city clerk there to call to pay it online. They sent me a link. They actually took the link off. And I actually, it went like 3, 4 years went by, and I went to go renew my pistol permit. That's like, oh, you got a warrant down here in this particular place. I remembered exactly. I don't get a lot of tickets, so I remembered exactly when it was. But even the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department was looking at it like, well, they took it off for a second and they put it back on you. Then so you're gonna have to figure that out still. But the point is, we have to give these smaller towns better access to internet access, for example, to make their services more user friendly, so that you actually can govern correctly. Because if you're sending emails and they're kicking it back saying this email address is no longer active or et cetera, there's a whole nother issue of an effective functioning government that has to be addressed
And
I,
I
outside.
I
also too with the with the Brookside incident, that actually went viral. It started out on social media and it ended up
okay.
with an elected official actually going, to Brookside and say, hey, you need to do something about it. And if this legislator kept people informed, of what's happening. So that's an example of how social media had made an impact, in that incident. It is also a form of direct action. And believe me, I'm all for, direct action and civil disobedience. And if that's something that needs to be done, hey, I'm with it 100%.
So can we reach out to someone else other than Mr. Jackson to say, look, can you just take a look, help us out here? Like, can we reach out to someone that doesn't handle that area?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter. And I'm going to say, let me not say it doesn't matter, but you can reach out to anybody that's willing to help you in those situations. For example, and I don't want to say this because I don't want people to vote for me for governor for this situation and say I'm going to get in there and do something about this particular situation. What I'm saying is that any elected official in this state is a resource. I know you represent this quote unquote district, but you represent the state, in my opinion. If you're in the state house or the state senate, you are elected to this district, but your duty is to the entire state, in my opinion. So you can reach out to as many people as you can, and I think if you start to build bring awareness to it, you'll have people automatically come onto this because there are a lot of questions that has to be answered in some of these. From the statement I've saw and the video I've saw, they don't line up to me. And I think this is one of those stories that if you put enough people behind it, like I know you've been pushing it for a while now, but if the citizens themselves constantly are online, liking, commenting, sharing, and bringing more attention to it to make the social media algorithm pick it up, it can do a lot of, it puts a lot of pressure on the elected officials down there to actually have to respond to it.
Well, I think
And
that's,
also,
yeah.
go to the news, the TV and radio stations. Go to them. I know there are, TV stations that do investigations. Because again, in the example that I used on the Brookside, because of the attention it was getting on social media, uh, the terrestrial media, the TV and the radio stations, they actually, did their own investigation and put the police department down there on notice. So that's another thing that you can do. You can also reach out to some of your advocacy groups like the NAACP or the ACLU. I'm sure they'll be more, than happy to, direct the citizens of Monroeville as to what they need to do to get accountability and transparency in this situation.
So so basically you're both saying this is the kind of case that's worth doing that for.
From
Absolutely.
what I see,
Because if it happens in Monroeville, it can happen anywhere. If we do not stop it, on a local level, it's going to spread like a wildfire. And while we are still talking about this, dealing with this, right now, we need to be 100, all hands on deck before it happens to somebody else.
and I do want to be very clear. I'm not condemning any other officers involved again, but what I am saying is 100%. Uh, Anybody who's innocent, they're going to be eager to show you the video. That's
That's
what
a
I'm trying to
very
get
good
people to
point.
understand. So if it indeed was not any foul play, just release the video. We can have this resolved in a matter of minutes. Again, I think everybody's due process, but at the same time, we can't give you due process if you don't put all the evidence out there. It's like me being a defense attorney and say, well, we're not going to show you the body cam footage because just take my word for it. That's not how it works. Show me the evidence. Let me make and let us actually see. This shouldn't be one of those instances where you're prolonging something that, according to that statement that was put out, there was no foul play. So you should, if you want to gain the citizens' trust, giving them something to trust in and believe in. That is what I'm simply saying. And
That's a
we can,
very good point. That's a very good point. But guess what? If let's just say the cause of death is homicide, which means his death was caused by someone else.
Mhm.
That means now there was an incident. Him running was an incident.
Mhm.
Is that correct? So if you know that there's a video out here where he ran, there's a allegation, it's been alleged that they used the taser on him and pepper sprayed him. That there were people, witnesses that actually heard the taser. There are people that said they heard him yelling for dear help. I mean, if you go and look at the articles, and I can probably play one of those where they talk to a couple of witnesses. But if you go and listen to that, they're saying, no, we heard him. He was yelling for for his life. So when he came out of those woods, he was exhausted. And then you saw that as they were dragging him, it dropped his head.
So something happened between, so what was missing was, whatever happened in the woods. So we're talking about transparency here. If you want to be transparent and accountable, to the people, put all the cards, on the table. Don't leave anything out. With Robert and I, we've been talking about accountability. We've been talking about transparency. We're talking about trust. If you do not put all the cards, on the table, how am I supposed to, to trust you? For all I'm concerned, allegedly, you could be lying, right?
That's right.
I do
So if you have nothing to hide, then put all the cards on the table. It's as simple as that.
I do want one point to make sure I'm on the same page. They do have body cameras on the police down there in Monroeville, correct?
From what I understand, yes, they do wear body cams. And as you saw in that statement, she said they turn all that over. So if that is true.
That's what I was getting at, is if you say that they wear body cameras and you turned them over. I'm just making sure that, because a lot of the stuff in the statement didn't make sense to me. So I'm just making sure I understood what she was saying. Okay.
I thought it was just me. So you're telling me, and you just read it for the first time. You're saying, wait a minute, something's off here. What sticks out as a red flag?
So that's basically what I was saying. So that's basically what I was saying too. Something is not, adding up. Something is missing. They add something to it that shouldn't be, be there. And weighing in on the video and the actual, statement, something is off. Now I don't know what it is, but something, is off. It feels like something is missing.
Now Stephanie joins us.
What's the missing piece to the puzzle?
Right.
That's the question. I think that's the $64,000, question. What is missing from the puzzle? And once we find that piece to the puzzle, it should be able to solve, everything that has been talked about up to this point. But if you have elected officials that are, sneaking and dodging and ducking and hiding, I mean, number one, your trust level is going out the door. Number two, people are going to be suspicious. And number three, people are going to have questions, and that's normal. And I'm like, what am I supposed to, think, if you got elected officials acting a fool the way they are? What am I supposed to think?
And that's exactly how the citizens are feeling. They're
am I supposed to go along, with whatever is going on? And unfortunately, you have, elected officials that go along, whatever for the sake of, I don't want to be, confrontational, or, I don't want to face the people. You're an elected official, elected by the people. That is your job. And like Robert said, if you cannot do your job, step aside and let someone else do it that actually wants to do the job and actually care about the people.
We could end the show right there. That was beautiful.
No,
that's
I got
exactly what I've been saying for 4 months, Keith.
Absolutely.
Now, as governor, if you were, let's say the people decided to write you in and make you governor, Robert, how can you, being all the way up there, affect change in stuff like this? Like you have all these local people, you can't override them. So how do you make this better from that level, being governor?
Ironically, in Alabama, you can, as the governor, take home rule away from the local places. They did it in Birmingham when we actually fought to get minimum wage raised, and they came in and said, nope, you can't do that. But as the governor, You show up as the governor down to Monroeville, the cameras will be there, and the nation's eyes will eventually get on it that the governor's taking their time to actually look at a situation like this. Or even if it's just a simple, the governor puts out a statement on something that this has to be investigated, or you put together your own task force to actually work with the people down there. If they don't have the resources, and from what I'm hearing, with the lack of websites, they don't have enough resources to actually be effective down there. So that's one of the things as governor that you have to do to make sure that you're setting up every single community in a position to where they actually can be self-sufficient and actually operate effectively. And if you're telling me that simple as sending an email is can't be done, that's a whole nother conversation that the governor has to make sure that we're. That's why if you actually, I don't want to turn this into a political stump speech, but if you look at my proposals, that's why you will see I want to have reliable internet access across this state, because those are some things that in the 21st century you're not going to get away from it. And again, I understand smaller towns are seeming to be neglected sometimes by the state officials, but as governor, my job is to rise Alabama up from the bottom to the top to make sure that we are actually in everyone's community, to make sure that everyone can feel the impact of growth. But the reality of it is that if you're putting your citizens in a position to where they don't even trust you, they're going to break away from the system as far as they're not going to participate in it. They're not going to believe that you're going to handle the responsibilities that you say you're going to do. So it makes it hard for them to want to even participate in the process. And a lot of things that you have said here today, I can understand the extreme frustrations that the folks down there are feeling. If you're talking about not just this isolated incident, but a lot of the other things that I'm sure are occurring down there, that the governor has to step in and actually evaluate the state from bottom up to make sure we're providing the resources for everybody to feel like not only will your voices be heard, but you can actually reach out to me. I have a transparency access to my campaign is because I do want to hear people, because I'm not in every single county. I'm not in every single city. I don't know every single issue, but this dashboard will serve as that primary hub to reach out so that I can use the weight of the governor's office to address as many issues. And let me be crystal clear about something. The governor isn't a dictator. The governor can't come say, I want it to be done, thou shalt be done. But the governor can raise awareness for any situation in this state.
So for people to get access to the governor, don't they have to go through their elected officials, or
Absolutely.
they can?
Currently as it stands, but like I said, my proposal would actually be a new dashboard online to where that is your direct link to the governor's office. There will be staff that actually monitors those things, and this is where you put in your concerns. It's called my transparency dashboard. But one of the things is that we understand that there's only so much that people can do. I understand that you have to have government officials sometimes step in, and I understand that here's my thing. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to downplay the governor's position. I understand how powerful it is, but I think you work for the people. I don't think it should be impossible for me as a quote unquote person in any city that's in this state that can't get in touch with you. You're supposed to be representing my interests. You're supposed to be making sure that life is getting a little bit better for me. So the notion that you're so important that I can't reach you, I don't buy into that notion. I've met most of these folks, and most people these folks who are elected officials are just normal, everyday people. It's not really anything. I'll say this: we have to stop celebritizing elected officials, and you should be able to be reachable to the people you're claiming that you're serving.
That's right. Now I'm going to ask you guys.
I want to speak to that from from a legislator, standpoint, because as a legislator, not only do I the state legislature, we pass an education fund, we pass a general fund, fund budget, and in that general fund budget, we should allocate, money to have a statewide, initiative to where, every place in Alabama have access to broadband internet. we can do that. We can allocate, money for that. We allocated the legislature allocated $1.2 billion for a prison that looks like a hog kennel. Why can't we allocate funds in the budget so that the entire state of Alabama will have access to the internet? Why can't we do that? Why can't we have oversight? If we're having a public safety, issue, with law enforcement, there definitely needs to be oversight. For
Definitely.
example, the state legislature has, a prison oversight committee. Why can't we have a public safety oversight, committee? I'm talking about the state intervening, in an issue that's happening now in Monrovia, it's happening in Birmingham, it's happening in Montgomery, it's happening all over. So that would be an example of the state trying, to intervene and to deal with the situation. You need better policy. You need more oversight, and that would put more teeth into these local elected officials. We're not telling them what to do, but
Right.
if you're not doing your job, the state's gonna have to intervene, in some shape, form, effect. So that's the legislator perspective.
So these questions now, I want to ask both of you. These are going to be our police accountability questions because these are the kinds of questions that the viewers want to see. It looks like Stephanie is able to join us now. Are you with us now, Stephanie? You're on mute. You're on
I'm
mute.
sorry. Sorry,
Yes.
I am. Thank you for having me. It has been a day. It was a wreck on the 710, unfortunately, trying to get here. I stopped by Starbucks. It was noisy, so I kept going. But thank you both for coming on. I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier, but I have been listening. And I will say that you both give me great hope for the future. I will also say, since I've been listening, I have several questions for you both. In regards to this case, as well as in regards to your candidacy. So let me ask first, where would you like me to start?
At the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, let's go with the candidacy first. Robert, since you're running for governor, I would like you to get your take on, and also trying to connect it to T's case here. And one thing you just said, but I would like to get your take on the Back the Blue bill that went into effect last October. And how do you think that will, well, I'm sorry, two things. The Back the Blue bill, I think that actually went into effect April 2025, if I'm not mistaken. And then October 2025, I also wanted to get your take on the KIV's prison. So both of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll start with and I'll work backwards from KIV's prisons. That was a waste of money. Um, why are we spending that type of money on these elaborate prisons to have to create more laws just to fill those prisons, essentially? That's my take on the prison. Now, do we need prisons? Absolutely, because there are some horrendous crimes that people can commit that need to be taken off the streets.
Right.
Now, as far as Back to Blue, I don't blindly back anybody. I think police should actually be held to a higher standard than us regular citizens. You took an oath to protect and serve. So, from my standpoint, it's not just about you wearing a badge and you get free range to terrorize the citizens. You should be held to a far higher standard than the rest of us.
Good point.
Okay.
Good point. And about the prison then?
Oh, that's the first one I addressed. Was the prison. I work backwards.
Yeah, as far as
okay. All right.
I also want to get your take on just the Alabama Department of Corrections in itself. So the thing that was used to back the KIV new prison was that we did need more space in the state of Alabama. Can you speak to that? And if our prisoners in Alabama are actually being given anything to rehabilitate their life versus just being in a crowded institution?
That's exactly where I wanted to head to. My plan is to focus more on rehabilitation. The reality of it is what happens is the recidivism rate is so high because there's no direction or opportunity once you're out. So for me, my administration would focus on first making sure that we know the people who are getting out on this particular day. I understand there are some things you can do in jail that extends that period. But for the most part, we know your release date. We need to have a plan in place to where those years that you spent in there, you've either worked towards getting your GED, if you didn't already have it, having some kind of trade skill, but also partner with businesses so that we know once you leave out of prison, you have a place to go as far as you have a job. Or it's not we got to go out and apply for a job. We know the day that you're released, we're sending you to these folks that do second chance opportunities. And here in Jefferson County, we do a second chance job fair every year or so to companies that hire people who are convicted felons, et cetera. So I want to push that statewide to where when you leave prison, you actually have resources in place other than, hey, you're free, go out here and figure it out. No, we know what it takes to survive in society. Let's give these folks the tools because for me, again, prison should be about rehabilitation. People make mistakes. I'm not saying that everybody is redeemable, but there are a ton of people in prison right now that they're only there because when they got released, they had no other options but to go back to what pretty much led them in the first place. So
Mm-hmm.
again, rehabilitation is my main focus when it comes to prison.
It's good. It's good. I like
Keith, do
that.
you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, so this back to blue bill was passed, in 2025. It basically gave police, I'm sure you heard the term qualified immunity. That's
Yeah.
basically
Mm-hmm.
what it is. Like if they get any type of
Yeah.
wrongdoing, this conduct, they're basically immune for any type, of prosecution. It is probably one of the worst bills that the state legislature has passed. And when I
Mm-hmm.
get in that seat as a legislator, I'm advocating for the total repeal of that bill, along with the bill
Okay.
that basically made Alabama an open carry state.
Yeah.
That bill needs to go too, because that is part of the problem. So when we talk about back to blue, we also had to talk about the body cam bill, which is also a controversy, as well. That has to be looked at as well as this back to blue bill, which is, it's a totally bad bill. It needs to be repealed. It needs to go. Along with Alabama, the fact that it's an open, carry state. So in terms of guns, it's a very bad idea, and that bill needs to go, as well, because you have officers, all across the state of Alabama, allegedly have been involved in so much misconduct that they're
Yes.
sweeping it under the rug, and nothing is being done about it. And then when you mentioned the back to blue bill, and I kind of glanced at it a little bit, it was like they just basically getting away, with anything and everything. And
Yeah.
I was like, as a
Exactly.
legislator, I cannot allow that to stand. That bill needs to go. Okay, because no, just as a politician doesn't deserve any type of immunity, your law enforcement does not deserve any kind of immunity as well. Because what do those positions have in common? They're public service positions. One is elected and one is not. But they're both public, which means you are dealing with the public. And those positions, you are to be held to a higher standard. And if you
Yes.
are misbehaving or you are involved in
Mm.
misconduct, you need to be held accountable. And this back to blue bill does not hold police officers, accountable, which means that they can strap on a badge and they pretty much can do, whatever they, want to do, and they can get away with it because of bills like that. No,
So
no,
I
I,
I definitely want to interject here. Y'all saw the video. Those officers are trying to get away with qualified immunity. This new back the bill, would it protect them?
unfortunately, it does.
What?
That's the problem. That's the problem.
Oh.
that's the problem that we're having. So you have unlocked the the central problem to everything that we have been talking about, in terms of law enforcement. Now, this bill came into effect on October 1st, 2025. And ever since that has happened, we continue to see a growing cases to where, we have misconduct from law enforcement officers. We have people dying in prisons, whether it's a state prison or a county prison, or a local prison. We're beginning to see an increase of these alleged offenses. And unfortunately, when you have a bill of this magnitude, you know, it simply says, I'm gonna read it. I'm going to read it exactly as Alabama's Back to Blue Law, which was House Bill 202, expands legal protections and immunity for police officers against civil lawsuits and criminal prosecution. Officers are protected from lawsuits and criminal charges when acting within their official duties. Protections is law if it's determined that an officer has acted recklessly without justification or violates constitutional rights against excessive force. Officers get a special court hearing to see if these legal protections, apply, pausing any ongoing criminal prosecution during review. The law applies strictly to incidents that happened after it took effect, not to past cases. So there you
So
have it.
that kind of goes into like my second part of this question. Because I've read the bill too, and I think like the full doc is about 25 pages when you download it on PDF. And one part I will say about the bill that I did see, what you just read there, was one, the excessive force or if they acted recklessly. Now, in T's case, if everything that the witnesses are saying, they did use excessive force, as well as they did not render aid when he refused to walk, or at whatever point that they decided that he was unresponsive. But I'm asking because even if they chose to bring charges against the officer. So right now, that the case was being investigated by the state Bureau of Investigations, and they turned it over to the AG's office. I looked at the history of the AG in Alabama, and not only does he not prosecute police officers, he stepped in some cases to actually lessen their sentences. So do you feel with this case that he would even move to try to prosecute them?
With the attorney general that we, have presently, I seriously doubt it. And this is why, again, the state legislature needs to intervene, in this case to address some of these policies like this back to blue bill. Uh, who is it benefiting? It's not benefiting us. It's benefiting law enforcement. And I doubt that this particular, and let's just be real, I doubt that this particular, Attorney General Steve Marshall, is not going to do anything, in reference to, the loved ones.
I seriously doubt it.
Yeah. So this is the legislator's opportunity, to come in and look at these policies and make some changes, because there definitely needs to be some changes. And I said again earlier, and I probably said 1,000 times, if it was determined that you have an officer that acted uh, with negligence, recklessly, then this bill, then they should not have qualified immunity.
Right.
They should be held accountable according to the laws of the state of Alabama, and they should be held and to have the appropriate penalty, necessary. And if I want to put in, any further, anytime that you have an officer that has a history, of misconduct, not only should they not be out of a job, but they should not go to another, municipality or another county to get a
Agreed.
job with that particular law enforcement.
Absolutely. Hmm.
That, you know, it's ridiculous how, and I've seen this all the time where you have an officer that's involved in misconduct. They get fired, then they go to another city,
Yeah.
and then they become a police officer, in another area.
But wait
That
a minute
should not.
though. But Keith, don't you have Alabama has the APOSTC? That agency is supposed to police the police, to make sure that they're not, because they're trained through that agency, right? So
But
why don't
obviously
they?
they're not doing their. Obviously they're not. Obviously
Uh,
they're not doing their job. And this is what I mean when I say that you have to have state intervention. Okay, because you got folks on the local level, the county level, and even some of these state agencies, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Now, one of the things that the state legislature does is that they are involved, they oversight some of these, agencies, like for example, the prison system, in the state of Alabama. You have an oversight committee in the state legislature, for that. So if the state legislator have to intervene in these matters, then that's something that I would definitely advocate for because again, you have a lot of folks that on the local level, the county level, and the state level, they're not doing their job. So someone has to intervene and say, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you're going to do it. Because otherwise, we're going to continue to have these conversations and we're going to continue to hear about these incidents as we heard tonight. Something has to give.
so I want to bring up some of the stats from your place, Keith, because I told you that we would talk about some of that because you were like, Ella, listen, it is off the chain in Birmingham right now, back to back, people just dying. And I wanted to bring up two because they are recent. June 2026, two people died while being held at the Birmingham City Jail, only 3 days apart. This one man, Patrick Krosky, 32 years old, was found unresponsive in his cell on June 11th, pronounced dead at the jail. City officials said the death followed an apparent self harm incident. That's what you and I were talking about, that they're saying these people are killing themselves. Then, just a few days later, on June 14th, a 35-year-old Kendall was found unresponsive after being placed on suicide watch following an earlier hospital evaluation. Now, he was transported to UAB and pronounced dead. And basically, subsequently, the city of Birmingham is basically saying um, they no foul play, either death, while emphasizing that the investigations were still ongoing. They said that the jail personnel followed established protocols. Now, do you think this is my policing question to you guys? Do you believe police officers should Alabama establish a statewide standard requiring an independent investigation whenever someone dies as a result of police contact? Like in these situations, they just basically said, there's an investigation, they're fine, our guys did what they were supposed to do. Should an investigation be administered every time? Anytime someone dies and police are involved, should there be an independent investigation?
I think
Independent.
I think there should always be an independent investigation. You can't investigate yourself. I'm sorry,
Exactly.
but more to the point, you have to start reestablishing the trust from the people to the police departments because when you start to have, because with these two particular cases were indeed natural causes, when you have such distrust from between the people and the police, we're always going to jump to conclusions of, nah, something don't sit right with that. One of the first things that, and again, if you're going to be the person in the position of authority, meaning the police, you have to take the biggest step forward, the first step forward, and building that trust back with the people. I think that's one of the biggest things that we have lost is that a lot of people don't trust the police. I'm running for governor of Alabama, and I don't want the police pulling up behind my car. And I know I have nothing to hide, nothing, would never have it. So there's a lot of retraining that has to be done with how the police deals with citizens. I've had some nice police officers, but I do have rude police officers. So I think we have to reestablish the trust with people. But again, you do need to investigate every single case independently. Again, people are people, and you get the wrong people in there, and they'll start to cover up for each other. So you have to have independent reviews.
Should the governor get involved with stuff like that? In other words, if you were the governor right now and I were to give you a call, let's roll call. Let's role play. All right, Mr. Mardis, you were on my show. Remember you were on my show? Well, now you're in office. You're governor now. So listen, I have a situation down in Monroeville. We have I'm just going to say we have another incident where a young man was killed. They're not doing anything. So I need some oversight here. Can you have someone come into Monroeville and look at this? What do you respond?
We should already have them down there with the transparency components that I want to put in place from my administration, is to make sure that the elected officials are all held accountable to the people. So within my transparency platform, what I'm saying is that every bit of concerns that citizens has, this is how you reach me. You send it to this, and we have a staff that actually runs through all of these emails that actually let us know what's going on in every place in this state. And what we do is we figure out what resources do we need, what programs do we need, and we figure out how to best advocate for the people's needs in these areas. So if someone is being murdered or there's another death in Monroeville, and police or elected officials are not doing their due diligence in the process that needs to be handled, then we definitely should have outside entities that can come in and actually make sure that people are actually held accountable. Again, I'm not saying we need to prosecute everybody and throw everybody under the bus. I want the facts. And again, I think it comes back to, if you're going to put on a badge and you're going to have the ability to uproot or end somebody's life, essentially, you should be held to a higher standard. And police chiefs, I think you should want to uphold a representation of your community. You don't want to have the citizens so afraid of your officers, but you don't want to also have them so I don't trust none of them. We have to get to a point to where there's more transparency in what is going on in these jails, because as long as you keep us guessing, our minds are always going to drift towards the more extremes of, no, they're killing these people. But again, we have to have independent audits of the entire state at this point. If you look, I was trying to be nice about it. I was trying to be nice. But let me
you don't have to be nice.
Alabama is the most corrupt state in this union. That's
all I wanted to hear. We can go home now, Stephanie.
I was trying to be
nice.
Okay.
There it is. We have a question here. Eric says, as an outsider, I've noticed Alabama can have some pretty harsh penalties for relatively minor crimes. Seems like there's a real need for some policing and criminal justice reform. I want both of you guys to answer that. What do you think about that statement?
Definitely has to be criminal justice reform. I actually did a video. I can't remember. It's a couple of it's last year sometimes when they first made the marijuana possessions a felony, or vapes felonies. We have extreme laws in that sense. We're most people who use vapes are these young folks in their 20s, and now you're attaching a felony to their record before they ever had a chance to even build a life. So we're putting hindrance on people just to look tough on crime. I mean, I'm one of those people who 100% believe you have to be tough on serious crimes, but petty crimes, we have to stop with the over policing of petty crimes. License plates, expired tags. Most folks who don't pay to have their tag renewed, it's because they're in a financial situation to where they can't afford it at this moment. Don't add another burden to them by saying, hey, we're going to give you a fine for not being able to pay your car tag on time. Figure out why. Now, most of the time, more times than not, it comes down to, in this particular moment, it was either eat or pay for the tag. I chose to eat. I think we have to have compassionate laws, but also be tough on serious crimes. And again, I'm going to die on this hill alone. It should have never been passed, and that is a felony for a young person to get caught with a vape, and it's a felony. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, Keith, I know I cut you off when you first started.
Oh, that's okay. So from a legislative perspective, uh, we got some policies in this state that is just inflammatory, right? For example, uh, we got a cannabis bill, that was passed that basically we know that having possession of cannabis and hemp, is heavily restricted, almost to the point of illegal. Where you have in Colorado, for example, it's not only legal in Colorado, but small businesses and entities, they are making a profit off of
Mhm.
cannabis, and hemp, which can be a revenue source if we decriminalize and deschedule cannabis. Alabama can actually have a new revenue source besides having the lottery. That's number one. Number two, of course, bills like Back to Blue needs to be repaired.
Mhm.
Like I said earlier, no law enforcement officer, especially there involving misconduct, shouldn't have any type of, immunity, point blank. Number three, we also have to, talk about the prison system because, as Alabama has been sued by the federal government, on the conditions, of their prisons, which they have not, addressed. That includes the prisoners not receiving medical care, they're not receiving, the necessities to live. Um, I went to the prison oversight committee meeting back in April, and they actually showed us a glimpse of what this $1.2 billion prison, looks like. It looked like something you could haul cattle in. I mean, this is absolutely, terrible. We're not saying, put them up in a five-star hotel. We're not saying that. But what I am saying is that they just because they are in prison does not mean that they should be treated in the most inhumane way possible. We cannot do that and say that we have empathy, for people and we're looking out for people. You can't do that. And then finally, we need to address the recidivism, part. When just like Mr. Martin said, we want to make sure that the prison system in Alabama is not only, in the correctional business, but they're also in the rehabilitative business, which
Right.
means that we want these individuals to be corrected. We want them to be rehabilitated. So when they go out into society, they will be, productive citizens. And there needs to be resources, and advocacy in place so that these services will be available, to those who are incarcerated and those who are formerly incarcerated. I believe if we talk about those four, things, we can get to the heart and the foundation of criminal justice system. If we deal with those four things, we will go in the right direction to criminal justice system, and not only involve, the people, but also involving the Alabama Department of Corrections, which needs a major overhaul. The members of the Prison Oversight Committee, they have already said that the state prison system needs a major overhaul because first of all, they're not being accountable. They're telling them, oh, you gotta wait 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, in a year. And meanwhile, you still got people that are dying in these jails. You still have people that don't have the necessities to live, and you still have inmates who do not have proper medical care. Now, how long do we have to wait to do something?
So, what type of rehabilitation and our medical is being offered in this new prison project? Is that part of the plan? I know it costs like $1.2 billion to build it, but what is the operational program like?
The operations is, from my understanding, when I went to the prison oversight committee meeting back in, in April, that the the operational logistics is still, being worked out. But what I do know is that the company, the healthcare company that was contracted with the Alabama Department of Corrections, they fell out with the state legislative oversight, prison oversight, committee, because they basically are accusing them of not doing their job, and they're not using the money that's given to them to provide the services, that the inmates in prisons, needed. So they ended up terminating their contract. So now they're looking for somebody else to take over that contract. And like I said, this whole thing, is a real big mess. And
It
as
is.
one member of that committee put it, y'all basically don't have nothing put together yet. You just throwing stuff at us again when we ask you questions, about being accountable and transparency. You're telling me we have to wait 6 months, 9 months, a year? It's crazy.
And what are they going to call this prison? You were telling me that earlier.
Yeah,
The,
it's
the
going to be named after
KIV.
Governor K.I.
Oh, how much money
That
do
was
they make off prisons? I want people to understand why we're even having this conversation about the prisons, why this is something they need to look at and be concerned about, Keith, because I know this is something you and I talked about earlier. Why should people care about what we're talking about right now?
There are several things to put into account. The first thing that people need to know is the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution.
Okay.
So that was put in place when Abraham Lincoln supposedly, had freed the slave. But it also has a clause in there that says that, if you are incarcerated, pretty much the state owns you. Just like, you have a person that owns slaves.
That's right.
If I could put it in layman's terms, that's number one. Number two, uh, these are private prisons. It's a
Yes.
multi-billion-dollar, industry. I can't even put a
Yes.
price tag on it. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry,
Industry.
and you have
Yes.
corporations that actually
Yes.
take part in this system, and they profit, off of the labor of those who are, in prison, because they don't hardly get paid little to nothing. Just like the slaves was back, in the 17th, 18th, 18th, 19th century.
But the
They
KIV
basically
is going to
got
be, this one is government owned, correct? The KIV prison?
Yes.
yeah,
Okay. So,
So
I
here's
mean,
yeah.
the
We're talking about the state
just in
prison.
general. Hmm.
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm talking about state prisons, in general, because it's not only going to happen there. It's been happening at all the other,
yeah,
other prisons. Meanwhile, the other prisons in the state of Alabama have been deteriorating for years.
yes.
Yeah, I saw
With,
that the Alabama solution. It was pretty horrifying. Hmm.
right. Also, too, at one time, basically the federal government, the Justice Department said, hey, your prisons are terrible. You need to get your act together, on these prisons. And so what happened was that the state of Alabama, Governor Ivey was scrambling, trying to find money to build these prisons. At first she was talking about using the CARES Act money, and then she talked about using the American Rescue Plan Act money. And so people like myself, we called the governor's office, we called the state legislature, was like, y'all better not let this happen. Or we going down there to Montgomery and we gonna flip some tape.
Flip some tables. I love it.
Yeah. So, they didn't do that. But what I found out was is that Governor Ivey allegedly had been dipping into the education trust fund
Mm-hmm.
to build resources, which is not uncommon because the state government has been doing that for years. They've been dipping into the education fund budget for other projects that has nothing to do, with education. And of course, according to state law, you can't do that. Because what is the law say? The law says that when you have this education trust fund budget, and I quote, is in the interest of education, end quote. And that's not what's been happening. But because they put things under the rug and keep us from not, knowing these things, it goes on because basically we don't know. And that's why we need to have these conversations like the one we have tonight.
Let me ask you a couple of questions, and this is for you too, Robert. So, as a candidate for governor, would you go back and change any allocations from the education fund that would be needed for the ongoing operations of the new prison? Would you
I
go
don't.
back and roll that back?
Yeah, I don't believe in taking money for education, especially given the state of our educational system here in Alabama. Now we have made some advancements lately, so I will give credit where credit is due. But at the same time, if every time, like Keith said, most folks don't realize that pretty much every time there's some shortfall here, we gut education fund. We say we can just pull it from education, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to get serious about education. So I wouldn't want to take money to strengthen this school to prison pipeline. No, that's pretty
Right.
much what we're
Mm-hmm.
doing in this state. We have to get to a point to where we recognize the value of educating our people as opposed to trying to incarcerate them or say that education isn't that important, so we can just gut that, or we can find ways to increase our revenues. There's several things that I want to do to generate new revenue streams here in this state, and we didn't get time to speak about a lot of them. But one of the things is definitely this marijuana industry. When you look at um, instead of making it a felony here to ban hemp and all of this, we
It's a
have
month of it.
some of the most fertile soil here in the United States. This
You do.
actually elevates the black belt because of the soil down there. We can create a from seed to sale process, and one of the main things is the way we get the citizens involved in it is the dispensaries. You get to you own the dispensary, but you own those dispensaries within the county that you stay in for the first 10 to 15 years or so. But we can create a whole industry out of this to generate the revenue to pay for some of these things that we need without always getting education. We can actually have the lottery. We can actually have game. We already have both of those entities down here. I mean, you walk inside of any gas station pretty much, you can buy a scratch. It's not
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
no, I stay 10, 15 minutes away from the Birmingham racecourse and casino. We have engines that we can use to generate revenue, but for whatever reason, we don't like to do those things. So one of the things that I definitely want to focus on is increasing revenue so we don't have to keep cutting education. And I want to put more money into education. And one of the biggest emphasis in education is financial literacy, because I think that's one of the most pivotal things that we have to invest in for our young people, especially if we're going to keep pricing them out of everything. At least let them understand how to make a budget so that they can have a shot at affording something.
Good point.
Absolutely. Very well
Very
put.
good point.
Very
Well,
well
guys,
put.
we are definitely almost at the end because I don't want you guys to be like, man, I'm not going to the Ella Johnson show anymore. They stay too long. They just like church. They don't know when to get out, right? I don't want that because I want you
This is great
guys.
conversation. This is
It
great.
really was a great
This is
conversation. It was
great
a needed.
conversation. I think that it needs to, to
Yeah.
be had. And I think anytime that, anybody has a show where you have people come on and talk about things that people are already talking about, I believe that you're going to get the audience and people are going to be glued because, they're going to say, well, I talked to my mom about this. I talked to my, friend about this. And so,
Mm-hmm.
we start a chain of people, having a conversation. It begins with having a conversation. And we have enough people having this conversation, then that would be the best time to organize them to do what we need to do to address these things.
So I want to hear about your plans to do some of that. We're in an election cycle right now. What are you doing, Robert? Because I know you said you need some votes. You need people to write you in. How are
Mhm.
you going to convince people to do that? Like, are you going to have any kind of forums where we can talk about stuff like this again? Like, what's your plan?
So I've been going around speaking to folks. I've mainly been trying to generate more from social media because one of the things we have to look at with taking big money out of politics is that we actually have a platform now that puts a lot of the power into the people's hand via social media. Because when you look at the majority of the money that is donated to campaigns, it's basically just used for advertisement. It's basically used to get your message out there. And if you're able to utilize social media heavily, it doesn't eliminate your ground game. It doesn't eliminate phone banking and traditional campaigning avenues, but it gives a more of a level playing field to get your message out to the masses. So we've been targeting social media heavy, but I've been going out to just various different festivals and whatever kind of, whenever there's any kind of gathering somewhere where there's a large group of people, I talk. I try to go speak with them. I don't I haven't done too many town halls because I'm just going to be honest. My name recognition isn't big enough to do a town hall. If I say I'm doing a town hall, most aren't showing up. But if you go speak to people directly, and my feedback is pretty much is, Robert, we like you. We like what you're saying. We just don't think you can win. So my biggest hurdle is to get people to understand that the independents are the biggest at 45% in this nation as far as the electorate. We just have to realize that voting for an independent candidate isn't throwing your vote away. It is letting your voices be heard. Not only are you sending a message to both the Democratic and Republican establishments that we want something different, but it gives you the ability to actually vote for people outside of we have to be so stuck with this mundane version of politics of it's only two sides of the story. You pick one of these lesser of two evils, and it's the only choice you have. I don't consider myself to be evil at all. I consider myself to be a person that is willing to sit down with most people. I'm not sitting down with a white supremacist. I'm not going to sit down with a Nazi and try to find common ground because some people go to the extremes and you can't find common ground. But the majority of us, regular, everyday Democrats, Republicans, Independents, we can compromise if we stop putting the D's and R's on the conversation before we have the conversation.
Very good point. What about you, Keith?
Uh, so let me tell you what I've been doing. Now, first of all, my social media, campaign is really strong. Uh, I I usually talk about the issues on social media every day or every other day. Uh, I ask questions. I talk about a particular issue, and people interact. That's great. But I also go to, wherever there's an event that's going on. I'm there to interact. With the people, not necessarily saying, "Hey, I'm running for office." I'm just there to form relationships, have conversations, with people, and most of the time they say, "Oh, I heard you running for office." I'll say, "Yeah," then I would talk, about that. And then in some cases, I will go somewhere, I would never discuss my campaign because, I'm there to observe
Right.
and I'm there to, listen. And then people will come to me, with questions and comments. And that's when I come out and say, I'm running for this particular, seat. Because one of the things I learned is that in order for someone to trust you, you got to be trustworthy.
That's right.
And one of the best ways that, I believe that trust comes in is actually listening to what, people have to say because they had heard all the politicians talking their ear off. One
Yep.
person, said to me, when the elected official is actually going to listen to me.
Right.
And yes, I, do town hall meetings, whether it's virtual or, in person. Plan to have some in September, and October. The best part about this race is that I only have a Democrat that I'm running against. There's no Republican, that's running. So I'm not getting you're splitting the votes and
Like what
you're
Robert is getting. Yeah,
yeah,
Robert.
yeah,
Robert's getting all that kind of hate.
Yeah.
I'm not getting, but I'm quite sure if I was running for a state office, whether it's governor, lieutenant governor, whatever, I'm probably gonna get the same thing. I'm probably gonna get the same thing.
And Keith, if I may really quickly interject, I just want to set the record straight. I'm not running to split the vote. I'm running to give Alabama another choice. I think.
Oh no, I mean,
I
that's
know
the
I'm not
thing.
saying you. I just want to address some of the folks who are
Yeah.
constantly saying that I'm a plant for Tommy Tuberville. I don't even support most of Tuberville's positions. But the thing that I want people to really understand with this campaign is that I actually just care. I'm 38 years old. I'm going to have to live with the decisions that are being made in this state, and a lot of decisions that I just don't agree with. A lot of decisions that I see that they're making, they're not leading us in a direction that's going to be prosperous for my generation to grow old in. So I'm not waiting another 10, 20 years to try to run for governor to say, let's fix these things. I'm trying to do them now while I have the energy to actually fix them. Because I'm just, no disrespect to any elected official out there, but there's things that has to be done right now with the affordability of housing. It's one of my main concerns with the improvement of our educational system, with the stop attacking. When you look at stuff like Medicaid expansion, the reason why this state won't do Medicaid expansion is because it's a quote unquote Democratic issue. And we're a Republican state, so they don't want Democrats to get credit for it. So 300,000 people are going uncovered. We can do things that actually make sense if we put the politics aside and look at what needs to be done. And that's what I'm trying to bring to the table as governor. So again, to all of the folks who hate that I'm running, I love y'all anyway. And I promise you the work that I'm trying to do is to be beneficial to us all. This isn't an ego trip. This is a survivability trip. This is survivability at the end of the day. We're not headed in a direction that I agree with, and I have hopefully another 4 or 5 decades of life left.
All right, guys, this is going to be quick. I'm going to ask 3 final questions, and these are questions that were sent in by some of the viewers. I said, what do you guys want to know about that affects your life? What kind of issues do you want to know about? These are the 3 questions, and I want you guys to answer in like 10 seconds so we can get out of here, okay? Deal? First question. People in Alabama are working, but they're still struggling to make ends meet. If you get to Montgomery, what is the one thing you would fight to change that would put more money back into working people's pockets? Starting with you, Robert.
That goes back to trying to generate the revenue through the lottery, gaming, and marijuana, and use those revenues to actually cut the grocery tax in this state, eliminate the grocery tax in this state. And depending on how much revenue can be raised, we can start to reduce the state income tax the same way Mississippi did when they legalized their lottery.
Keith, 10 seconds.
3 things: eliminate the grocery tax, strengthen small businesses, address public safety, and making sure that people pay their fair share in utilities.
Now, the follow-up question to that is, how do you pay for it without creating another burden on taxpayers?
Again, you increase your revenue by the 3 things I mentioned on the prior question. Okay. Which is gaming, lottery, and marijuana industry revenues.
All right. We're seeing people worry about utility bills, property taxes, insurance, and the cost of simply maintaining a home. What can state government realistically do to keep Alabama families from being priced out of the communities they've lived in for generations? Start with you on this, Keith. Start with you, Keith.
That would definitely be a policy issue. And, I will have advocate for policies, in place that would address affordability and the everyday costs of Alabama families.
Robert?
So one of the things that actually happened is I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was Senator Warnock from out of Georgia who actually limited the number of outside corporations that can come into and buy up residential homes. That's one of the highest drivers right now of affordability. So piggybacking off into something similar to that, we have to actually make sure that we're not allowing huge corporations to come in and buy up a lot of private land, a lot of private residential properties, pricing people out of those things, putting them in a cycle to where they have to rent for longer than necessary. I know there was a short-winded answer, but it's a little more details needed for that one. But we'll leave it there.
It's okay. You're in a safe place right here. We're not gonna hit the buzzer on you. Not here. Okay, did you answer that one, Keith? Yeah, you gotta answer that one. Did he answer that one first? I'm
first.
He answered first, right? First. Okay.
Yeah,
this is the final question, guys. Alabama isn't just Birmingham, Mobile, or Montgomery. What is your plan for rural Alabama, especially communities that are dealing with aging infrastructure, limited economic opportunities, healthcare access, and roads that need attention?
Me or him?
I'll start. You, Robert.
Well, I'm going to be very quick. I actually have my rural Alabama revitalization plan on social media, on Facebook right now. It's a 26-point plan that's on social media right now, and part of it is my rural revitalization. So I'm trying to talk a little fast, which is making sure we get broadband down there, make sure we are investing into industries such as, again, marijuana, which strengthens because we need hubs for distribution, we need growing sites, et cetera, et cetera. We create jobs down there. We bring the Medicaid expansion to shore up the closing of these hospitals. There's a lot more. I'm just trying to talk really fast, but go onto my Facebook page. You'll see the rural area revitalization plan. I have a 26-point plan on that on my Facebook page. It is there. As a matter of fact, once we get offline, I'm going to get something to eat real quick, and I'll repost those online.
Sounds good. Keith?
Eliminate the grocery tax, bringing additional revenue to the state that will bring new jobs to the state, strengthen education. That is very important. Have genuine oversight so that people would not have to choose between taking medicine, or feeding their family.
Okay. Now, this is not a trick question. This is a real question. How do you make sure rural Alabama isn't only remembered when it's time to vote? That's a deep one right there. That's a deep one. That's an Ella Johnson special right there.
The reason under my administration it won't be forgotten is because you're only as strong as the entire state itself. And part of my revenue growing stream is to actually utilize the Black Belt and its abundance of fertile land to actually get us back food independent. That's one of the things I didn't mention, but we can get food independent. Going back to the marijuana industry and hemp, there's a lot of land that is being underutilized. We're just not investing into it. And again, one of the things with education is I want to invest into our teachers to go down to the rural areas, to incentivize them to go down to the rural areas, such as paying for so their student loans for if you teach down there for 5 to 10 years, we'll come up with a better number as far as long term of you being down there.
That's a good idea.
Those are things that we want to do to revitalize down there to make sure, because I mean, there's areas down in some rural areas that don't have certified teachers for the whole year. So we have to make sure we're putting certified teachers down there, and that's some of the things we can do.
For me, I'm going to put on my advocacy hat because I love going to places and I love talking to people. And we have to build these relationships, with the people, let them know that they have not been forgotten. That's number one. Number two, we're going to work out a plan to where, all the things that we talked about would be implemented there. Because what a lot of people don't know, and Mr. Mardis may have, tapped on this, the Black Belt has so much potential, so much land, so much resources that being untapped. But because we're playing politics, we're not even, addressing those things. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's, get the diamond out of the rough. Let's mold it and shape it to where we're expanding Medicaid. We're incentivizing businesses to go down to the Black Belt to, to develop and to create jobs. And that will increase the likelihood of the residents, there. Yes, utilize some of the resources there, down there. Let's create revenue streams that's going to you know, rebuild Alabama's, economy so we will no longer be in the bottom of everything that is embarrassing to the state.
Sounds like a plan. It sounds like both of you have some good ideas for what Alabama needs moving forward. Um, so, Robert, let's just pretend you don't win, and Tommy Tumerville or the other guy, Doug Jones, wants you to work. Which one would you go work with? One's a Republican, one's a Democrat. You're in the middle. You're an independent. So, which side would you go if they wanted to call on you to work with their administration?
So I don't look at it as a Democratic or Republican administration. I look at it as the administration of Alabama, and it just so happens that you're waving a certain flag at a time. So for me, I would go work as long as you're utilizing me and not trying to. Uh, I would go work with both of them just because for me it's more important to actually get work done as
Right.
opposed to who's quote unquote the boss. I mean, it's a collaborative effort, even if Tommy's the governor or Doug's the governor, or if I'm the governor, it's still a team effort. And I don't, I'll say it like this: don't ever deny yourself a seat at the table because you're worried about who's sitting at the head.
Okay. And on that note, we're going to get out of here. But I want you guys to, because we started this show talking about T. Tunstall, I want to end it talking about T. I want you, because his mother is watching, and I would love for both of you to just kind of speak to her and her family. And then I want you to speak to the elected officials in Monroeville, not trying to chastise them, but just, it won't come from me this time. You guys pretend you're Ella right now, if y'all could do that. I'll throw a wig at you, give you some lashes. Just pretend you're me right
I
now.
lost my hair for a reason.
But I want you to both speak to the families first, and then our elected officials, and then we're saying good night. Start with you, Keith. The family is watching.
So I just want to say to, the family that first of all, I'm not going to pretend that I understand what you're going, because, I don't have a loved one that's in this situation. But I want to let you know that, I'm here when you need me. You can call on me whenever you need me. I will be a listening ear. I will continue to be an advocate regardless of what happens. I will continue to hold elected officials accountable. And most importantly, I would pray for intervention.
Thank you.
And then to the elected officials, uh, I want to say to the elected officials that you have an opportunity to do the right thing. You have an opportunity to build trust among your constituency. I want you to get out of this political, arena and really see the pain and the hurt that your constituency are going through. If you can get past the politics, I believe that you can work together to bring back trust to your local community. That's the
Thank you.
only thing that I ask of you, the elected official.
Very well said. Robert?
So to the family, first and foremost, I'm sorry for your loss. You know, I'm not, there's really no words that can explain when you lose a child. Uh, it's just different. Losing a parent is one thing, but losing a child is a whole other thing that I hope none of us have to ever experience. But unfortunately, it happens. And I hope that you can have the strength to hold on and hopefully that these folks will do right by you at the very least so you can get closure into knowing what actually happened. Oh, and I'm not here to chastise our elected officials, but if you're going to be in a position that's a public servant that is serving the people, you can't turn your backs on them when they need you most. And this is one of those situations to where they need you to be transparent. They don't need lip service. They need you to be transparent about what happened. If you have video evidence, one way or the other, it should be out there at least to the family, even if you don't want to put it out to the public. Let these folks have understanding of what happened to their loved one. I think that's the least they could ask for.
Sounds good. Well, I want to thank both of you so much for being here on the Ella Johnson Show. I think it was a great conversation. We shall do it again. What do you
Thank you.
guys think about that? We should do it again.
Absolutely.
And I would appreciate it if you guys would share this story and maybe even bring up a conversation about what's going on in Monroeville. Continue to follow me because I have a series called Monroe County Uncovered, and we are uncovering things that are happening in Monroe County because it needs to. The people are talking. They're coming out in dribbles, but people are talking. They have concerns about illegal evictions, being the school board bullying. It apparently, allegedly, is something that's of a grave concern in Monroeville because you have the N-word being thrown around to a 9-year-old kid, and the school is just, listen, our solution for the bully, you go over there and they go over there. Like there's no real, and then this child is like dying little by little. He needs counseling. There's so many issues that are going on. So I would appreciate it if you guys would definitely, one thing I am committed to is the T. Tunstall story. So if you guys can help me get this word out, if you know people that I should be speaking with that can help get this to another level, please put me in touch with them. That's why I bring people on the show, because I know you know people that I don't know. And we need people that can get the attention of the Monroeville elected officials. I don't care if it's the mayor, the city, the city council, the police chief, the sheriff, whomever. Just somebody that can get in their ear and say, listen, the people just want something. Say something, right? So if you guys know who those people are and you can help in that way, I would really appreciate it. The mother says thanks to both of you. So she heard what you had to say. And all right, guys. Well, listen, we're going to get out of here. We'll be back here Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, because I'm bringing on some parents who want to talk about what they have experienced with the Monroe County Board of Education. Now, both of these ladies have agreed to try to reach out to the Board of Education so they can appear at the next board meeting to speak about their concerns. So that's all coming up Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, right here on the Ella Johnson Show. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening. I know we went a little over, but it was necessary, right? So thank you all so much. Have a great evening, and we will see you next time. Have a great evening. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Ella Johnson Show. We'll see you next time.
We are supporters of the Ella Johnson Show. We live in South Korea. We have been watching Ella Johnson Show for like a year now, and we love her show. Her show is very inspirational, motivational, and educational.
If you would like to be a guest on the Ella Johnson Show, send an email to theellajohnsonshow@gmail.com or send a text message to 407-334-6997.
We love Ella Johnson Show.